Hello, dear Rava. I hope this finds you well, my dear. I thought that today we might anticipate a talk about Konstantin Stanislavski, the celebrated progenitor of what came in America to be called the method, which, thanks to Marlon Brando and Rod Steiger, came to prominence as the preeminent way of acting. And still, through a series of actors, including Dustin Hoffman and Dan Day-Lewis, it's still the creme de la creme of theatrical preparation, as Stanislavski intended. Now, he may have intended it, but the gap between intention and realization, which we were discussing in terms of Bert Brecht, is just as true on the other side of the line, at the other extreme from Brecht's approach to theatrical preparation. So we see, perhaps in all human endeavor, that there are plans and theories, and then there is practice. I was shocked to read in Chekhov's diary that after the first night of the Cherry Orchard, Chekhov went home. Chekhov, the great playwright who had provided Stanislavski with the material out of which to create the method, the material out of which to write An Actor Prepares, a great book, and other great books. Chekhov, who had made possible the Moscow Arts Theatre and all the theoretical constructs that proceeded from that in Stanislavski's mind. Chekhov, who was responsible for the method and for the revolution in acting and in theatre. He came home after the first night and wrote in his diary, "Konstantin has ruined my play." But there, bless the man. The most perfect Chekhovian utterance, that. I have lived with it, travelled with it, and held it close to my heart for almost all my life. So, what we have, as I've discussed in the past, are two extremes in theatre, two extremes in acting. And there are proponents of both sides, not so much at different periods of history, usually at similar periods of history and at the same time, and probably in most productions of plays. Certainly during my lifetime, if you staged a play, you had people who were utterly devoted to becoming the character. And in that end, to that end, many of them used Stanislavski's writings as a handbook, as a way of proceeding to burrow into the character that they were playing so as to achieve a more perfect union, to use an American phrase, between actor and character. And in the same production, there will be people who totally scorned this approach, who found it pathetic and infantile and needing to have support for a performance from the illusion of inhabiting the role. And these actors would walk in and go straight into character, or as much character as they felt was necessary for the performance. So that extreme, as we've discussed, was carried forwards by Brecht, who said not only is that permissible and adequate, it's absolutely necessary and mandatory that the actor should not fool himself or herself into supposing that he or she is presenting the audience with a facsimile of the real. And Brecht, in effect, said, you're not there as some kind of psychological incubus as a test case of self-delusion, of imagining that you are the character or are presenting the character. On the contrary, you're there to tell a story, and to that end, your character needs only to show as much as the story needs in order to tell itself truly and properly. The problem with, as we found when we discussed it with Brecht's proposal, is that it's ideologically very strong, but in reality, theatre involves a relationship between actor and audience, regardless of the theoretical constructs that are supporting the actor's performance. Audiences relate to actors who, to use an American word, are relatable. It's an extraordinary word that's come to be fairly recently. And the relatable actor is not the one who is choosing a way to present character. That's the problem with theoretical suppositions about what the best way to act a character is. The audience see a person who is attracting their curiosity or their care, their pity, their love, and maybe really above all they respond to a magnetism, a stage magnetism, which anybody who works in the theatre is very familiar with as to what that is. Or rather, they're very familiar with its existence. What it is, nobody knows. Sometimes it's a kind of self-absorption on the part of the actor which seems to draw the audience towards it. Sometimes it's a kind of openness and inclusiveness towards the audience which enables them to take part in the actor's journey. It's a very mysterious thing, and it is... it eludes both apostles of Stanislavski and method with their intense attempt to be the character, and as it eludes Brechtian actors, if such there be, really. They may claim that they don't need to prepare the character, but probably they do. But they may do as Sir Laurence Olivier famously said to Dustin Hoffman when Hoffman asked what he did to supply all the elements of identification with the character, and Olivier is supposed to have said, "Act, dear boy." So for Olivier it was very simple. It was acting. Acting was a technique. It wasn't a psychological EST experience where you submitted yourself to a magical process. It wasn't psychological at all. It was creative, artistic, and it consisted very often of bold strokes. All of Olivier's performance that I saw, and I saw a great many, had bold strokes, memorable moments around which Olivier arranged his performance. But you left the theatre being unable to forget that moment when he swung down from the rock and was stabbed, that moment when he closed the briefcase at the end of Uncle Vanya, using a snap from the buckles on the briefcase which echoed in your brain and said, "Finita la commedia." The game is up, the drama is over, the story is finished. And that was a very showy, showmanly way of organizing a performance, but it was one that induced his entire generation to think of Olivier as the greatest living actor. He was no kind of actor at all from the point of view of a Dustin Hoffman or a Dan Day-Lewis, because he made no attempt to enter the character. On the other hand, both Hoffman and Day-Lewis produced magnificent performances by inhabiting the character and going home as the character and tormenting their families as the character, by never giving up on being the person through the whole process of the run of the play or the filming of the movie. So both came to the same thing, perhaps. Who was the person underneath? What did Olivier bring to the feast? What did Hoffman bring to the feast? Or Brandau or Steiger? Clearly great actors in some sense, but did it have anything to do with the way they approached the idea of acting? Was it not simply an emanation of who they were and that strange, magical connection that is made between a person who tells a story and a person who hears it? So, nevertheless, we had in Stanislavski a whole theoretical elaboration of hyperrealism in theatre, which was made possible by a whole number of factors. The evolution of realism and naturalism itself in the arts of the 19th century, and that percolated into decor and how theatre could be presented with very elaborate devices which made it more real, and so it encouraged the actors to make it more real. And Stanislavski was the vanguard of making it more real. And making it more convincing and more exciting by entering as actors into the supposition that you were the person that you presented. This, when it came to America, was developed into the thing called the method and became a school of acting that you could go and enroll in and learn how to be a method actor. Many actors who went through that school emerged and were no different from they were when they went in. Perhaps that's true of all of them. Some of them were not celebrated, did not become Brandau or Steiger. And so it seems as if there were people who were made made with that magnetism, whatever it might be. I remember when I was learning about all this in practice at college and doing many productions, we had a wonderful actor called Roger Gartland, who was compulsively watchable. It was extraordinary. I always used to say that there were several kinds of actor. There was the actor who was aware all the time, wherever they were on the stage, of what the audience were attending to. There was the actor who were quite certain that the audience was watching them, regardless of what they were doing, and how tiny their part was, and how many people standing on stage were between the audience and them. Yet they were certain that they were being watched. It seemed to me a genuine acting quality. And then there was Roger, who wasn't even aware that the audience were there. But his utter concentration on being the person was fascinating because of some quality that Roger had, which had nothing to do with his idea of acting. So great storms created around these great vortexes around these two opposing ideas of acting as a psychological immersion and acting as technique, as walking in and painting a picture with the acting skills that you had evolved. But nevertheless, as I say, to me, as a practitioner of theatre over many years, what was fascinating was that there were Stanislavskian approaches by individual actors within a given production, and right next to them, there were Olivier-esque approaches where they were trying to bring off effects that made the audience notice, that made the audience aware, that made the audience experience the thing they wanted them to experience, unlike the Day-Lewises and the Hoffmans, who were focused on being rather than doing, and were expecting the audience to enter into the world they were creating. But had they not been the person they were, and thereby the actor they were, none of these approaches would have meant anything. So it may be that these two apparently opposed ways of addressing acting are irrelevant. All that matters is the actor and his innate ability to make people watch him or her, more mysterious than anything we know or have been able to unravel or understand. Thank you for listening, and please Be well.